Insurance isn't a one-size-fits-all, and shopping for it shouldn't feel like squeezing into something that just doesn't fit. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they show you options that fit your budget. Enough hunting for discounts, trying to calculate rates, and tinkering with coverages. Maybe you're picking out your very first policy. Or maybe you're just looking for something that works better for you and your family. Either way, they make it simple for you to see your options. No guesswork, no surprises. Ready to see how easy and fun shopping for car insurance can be? Visit Progressive.com and give the Name Your Price tool a try. Take the stress out of shopping and find coverage that fits your life on your terms. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Howard, I'm so glad I saved your number. My husband fell at a construction site and is in critical condition. I knew it wasn't safe.
I'm very sorry to hear that. I just want to let you know I'm here to help. Yeah, tell me more about it. Work injuries not only affect the victim, but also everyone around them. Inc. Law is Chicago-based and here to advocate on your behalf. With over 100 attorneys and staff, if you or someone you know has questions about a work injury, call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal. That's Inc. Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday night, May 10, 2026. For the moms out there, we hope that you had a lovely Mother's Day weekend. For the Chicago White Sox, it turned out to be a good weekend against the Seattle Mariners. After Friday's barn burner, in which the Mariners and White Sox combined for 20 runs scored in a 12-8 Seattle victory, the White Sox pitching staff found their groove, winning on Saturday 6-1, and the White Sox on Sunday were down 1-0 heading into the 8th inning before Randal Grichuk hit a solo home run to tie it. Drew Romo hit a double, made his way over to third base off a Sam Antonacci sac bunt, and then Miguel Vargas' fly ball to left field was kind of shallow, dangerous to tag up and run on Randy Arozarena, but Drew Romo made that mad dash. Arozarena's throw missed the mark, and the White Sox had a 2-1 lead, but the fans in attendance had to watch Sir Anthony Dominguez get the bases loaded with one out. But he survived that situation, and the White Sox held on to win 2-1 and win another series. The Chicago White Sox are now 19-21 as we hit the first quarter mark of the 2026 season. Later in this episode, we'll share our first quarter grades for the White Sox. But the White Sox are just a game back at Cleveland in the American League Central. If the season were to end today, the White Sox would finish tied for one of the wild cards in the American League. We weren't expecting the White Sox to contend for the postseason in 2026. But if the American League is going to sputter like it has all season, and like Dan Zaborski said in our previous episode, if 84 wins could be good enough to win the division, should the White Sox have a change of heart and mind about this season? White Sox general manager Chris Getz spoke to reporters prior to the Seattle series and was asked about if he thinks the team is contending, and if so, does that change the thought process of how the White Sox front office conducts their business?
Paying attention to what's going on always in baseball, whether it be in the American League, our division, and we're tracking that, but that doesn't, we're not losing sight of what we're building towards here. And I think more than anything, guys are continuing to progress and develop, both at the minor league level and at the major league level, and they've taken advantage of these opportunities. We just want to continue to play quality baseball, compete. I think, really, if you just look at on a daily basis, on a nightly basis, we feel like we have a chance to win. And it's not like we didn't, in the past, it was more, you almost needed to be perfect. And now, there's the lineup is deeper. The rotation is deeper. We've got some weapons in the bullpen to allow us to navigate and finish off games. And the defense is improved. But we just want to stay at it. We'll see. We'll see where things go. Really happy with how some of our minor league players are playing right now, and you look at their development, and obviously the first pick this upcoming draft has gotten a lot of attention, and to be able to an opportunity to add that level of talent into what we're doing is adds to the optimism and excitement. We felt really good about how we were going about things, and we all know that there's a lag to see it happen at the major league level, and now to get some glimpses into what we're capable of doing more on a regular basis than we were in the past is encouraging and exciting, and hopefully our fans feel the same way about where this is headed. But most importantly, we just got to stay at it and make really sound decisions and continue to develop these players, and that's how we're going to separate ourselves. We're going to continue to add talent, continue to find ways to get these guys better. They're going to start feeding off of each other. They already are. We've been very intentional on who we're bringing into this clubhouse, and we're looking for winning type players that are focused on, what do I got to do to help this team win, and that's starting to really seep into this organization as a whole, and really help clarify who we're targeting at any level of acquisition. So we feel like we're in a good spot. We've got an ability to maneuver at any point too. We've shown those capabilities, but we feel good about where things are at. And we're looking forward to this weekend against a really quality club, one of the top teams in the American League. They've proven that, and it's going to be a nice test for us. We feel like we can contend. We feel like we can win series. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, at all. We're just going to stay at it.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
We've all been there. You're away for the weekend. The big game is on, and you realize you're restricted from watching. Or maybe you're trying to check the latest lines on your betting app, but your local network is blocking the site. These are the ultimate unforced errors. You can prevent this from happening to you with IPVanish. IPVanish is the powerhouse VPN designed to keep you in the game no matter where you are. IPVanish helps you stay connected to your favorite team and streaming services while you travel. But it's not just about watching the game. For the bettors out there, IPVanish provides an extra layer of security and privacy that helps you access your account safely on public Wi-Fi. Plus, IPVanish is lightning fast, so you won't have to worry about lag during those crucial live betting moments. Right now, get a massive discount at IPVanish.com. That's IPVANISH.com to get started today. Secure your play and go to IPVanish.com.
Joining me now are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And gentlemen, the Chicago White Sox are 19-21 as we hit the first quarter mark of the 2026 season. They're just a game back in the American League Central. They're tied for a spot in the wild card. James, what's the mood like in the White Sox clubhouse?
I'll have you know they're pretty upbeat. I think there's a level of buy-in, at least that they're having like a good season where they're making progress towards what they're doing. I mean, if you ask any of them, certainly on the record, they certainly have an idea of like, why not us, or why, like, let's just keep our heads down and keep doing good things and see where we're at. And I mean, at least Walker McKinven today, because he was doing the pregame media instead of Will Venable, talked about getting praise from around the league about their consistent effort level, and talking about how Randall Gerchik coming in was saying like, man, these guys are nuts. You guys play really hard every night. And I think with Mydroff and Antonacci, it's probably easier to sell that very visually. But he was saying that Vargas and Martin and Mydroff and Colson Montgomery are all driving parts of that. So it's been pretty loose, pretty much under the Venable era. I think the kind of consistent roll with the punches mood of the group kind of follows him to some degree, but certainly now that they're winning, certainly with like Kyle Teel like coming back, like probably one of the happiest interviews done all season of him just going out on a rehab assignment. I think it's pretty good. I was joking because we interviewed Jerschley, the third base coach, and Sir Anthony Inga's post game today, and I was saying to Jerschley, like, usually the third base coach and the closer getting interviewed post game sounds like a horrible series of events happen, but this is a rare flip on that. So I think they're like, especially with the idea of the kind of segment in the season of like, all right, we were pretty bad the first 12 games, but now we were, if you look at the season as a whole, like there's still 2 games under, they still negative run differential and all that, but they feel like once we got going, which they kind of have a more of a sense of demarcation of when that started, we've been pretty good. And I think that's now stretched longer than their bad stretch was. Not that it's like blown away all traces of it, but I think there's generally like, hey, look at what we're doing. We're pretty good. We're fine. We're on the right track type of sense for them.
Yeah, I mean, the White Sox are 18-16 in their last 34 games, so I could definitely understand where the White Sox are coming from on that front. Quickly on Kyle Teel, James, so what's the plan here? So you mentioned that Teel is heading to Charlotte for rehab. Any idea how long he's going to be there?
He's missed 2 months, so it feels like a week is the safest estimate. You know, he will tell you, like, I've been able to not only like hit on traject, but he's been catching even longer than he's been able to be hitting. Catching like bullpens and whatnot, I think it's different from like catching a game and managing all the defenses and getting used to the feel and the timing of everything that goes on and just being in the live game in the field. I think there's still like, you want him to do that a few times before bringing him right back. But in terms of like the mechanics of where his swing should be at, or, you know, where his timing should be at with pitches, like he's been able to catch and hit against high velocity for a good long time now. Does that shorten the span for a guy who's been gone 2 months? And they're probably going to build up. Like he told us he's catching 5 innings on Tuesday and he's DHing after that. Like, just in terms of like when he's caught back-to-back games and you want him to do that physically before you bring him back, that seems like it should take at least a week. But there is a lot of like modern whiz-bang technology to like how he's gotten more reps than you would think and hasn't just been on the shelf this whole time.
Got it. So it's probably unlikely he rejoins the White Sox for the upcoming weekend series against the Chicago Cubs.
That's like the safer assumption. He certainly would love to be back by Friday. He said as much. If he plays a full game and looks great and they're really like they do well against the Royals and they're in first place, there are emotions running in the people who run this team as well. I wouldn't be like knocked out of my chair if they did something like that. I think they do have to respond to how he feels a little bit. And I think the more normal historical rehab, you know, schedule would be like he catches back-to-back games, full games before he comes back, or he at least catches and DHs back-to-back days before he comes back. That's kind of follows the pattern of what they were doing with his ramp up. So I think it's something like that, but the poetry of that is certainly compelling to some degree. And it would be very marketable, which has guided some decisions seemingly for the better of recent from baseball ops.
I would prefer, given what happened with Austin Hayes coming back less than 100% and the White Sox saying like, we're not sure he's 100%. Like, I would prefer to avoid that situation where they haven't checked off at least, you know, the back-to-back games part of it. Back-to-back games catching, just so they could say like, we put in the work, he put in the work, versus emergency dictated that he needed to be up here now, or else we need to find an outfielder or a catcher from somewhere, and we're not sure this is going to work. And then like a different injury pops up. I think that would be pretty, given the stakes. Like Austin Hayes is one thing, Kyle Teel is a whole nother level. So I would err, no matter how compelling a weekend series against the Cubs might be, that they not rush him back for it, because, you know, any kind of cascade injury or a follow-up event that knocks him out for another, you know, 3 to 6 weeks would be pretty, maybe devastating is the wrong word, but just so counterproductive to what the season's supposed to be about.
Yeah, I knew I was supposed to take it 90% on the base pass, but we really needed that hit type of moment doesn't come up in first playing the Nashville Sounds the way it might, playing the Kansas City Royals or the Chicago Cubs.
No, good points around. Next week, the White Sox do have their final, weird to say, in May, their final West Coast road trip when they play the Seattle Mariners again, obviously in Seattle, day off, and then they're in San Francisco for the weekend. So maybe Teel rejoins the White Sox, or he spends a couple weeks in Charlotte before he rejoins the White Sox at the end of the month for their homestand against the Minnesota Twins and the Detroit Tigers. But it sounds like Kyle Teel finally is going to be playing in rehab games, and sooner than later he'll be rejoining the Chicago White Sox, and that'll be another boost to the White Sox lineup. A boost to the White Sox lineup this weekend, and Jim, he's been playing well this year. Munetaka Murakami's in the spotlight. James and I try to talk up Colson Montgomery, even though in a local level, he gets a lot of attention, but on the national level, not a whole lot. Podcast listeners, Montgomery ranks second now in WAR for shortstops. It's just Bobby Witt Jr. and Colson Montgomery that lead shortstop production in the American League. But Miguel Vargas, Jim, had a big weekend offensively. He hit the 2 home runs on Saturday. He almost hit another one on Sunday. His double hit off the wall, but he came through with the game-winning sac fly. Great base running by Drew Romo. Awful throw by Randy Arozarena, but still, it counts. And Jim, I think with Vargas stepping up his game offensively, now with Murakami, Vargas, and Montgomery, the White Sox have a solid middle of the order.
Yeah, it's Vargas. We had the conversation before the season about if he's going to be a better hitter, a more productive hitter, what does it look like? Does he find power that doesn't seemingly, there hasn't been the kind of signs metrically that suggests like huge power is in the offing, or does he look more like a Yuli Gurriel type of somebody who can hit 270 versus the 234 hit last year? And then all of a sudden you're looking at somebody who's got an above average OBP and the slugging is comfortably in the 4s, and that plays, and the defense is a little bit better, and he's just this average, maybe slightly above average third baseman if you factor in games played, because he's been pretty healthy with the White Sox. The fact that he's been able to gain power while still maintaining the plate discipline and the contact, like his strikeout rate has dropped while his power has increased. That's a pretty neat trick. All of a sudden you're talking about a different player that just wasn't necessarily in the forecast or could be expected based on what we'd seen from him the previous 1+ seasons and, what he'd shown with the Dodgers at the big league level. So you go from like the way he started the season, which is, well, you just got to play out the string with him, and then he might get non-tendered based on like the first couple weeks of the season of him not distinguishing himself on either side of the ball, to being like, here's a guy who's going to hit based on what he's shown so far, like what? He's coming up on 35 homers and striking out 17% of the time. That's pretty awesome. And the defense has been fine, I think. Maybe not above average, but like it plays. Perhaps when the White Sox have too many shortstops at the major league level, something has to give, but he's improved there, I think. And certainly with the way he's hitting, you can accept his defense. And that makes the conversation, I think, about the left side of the infield when you have Caleb Bonham, if they draft Rock Chalowski, and you have Colson Montgomery already there. I think the idea was like at the start of the season, well, let's see what Vargas looks like. Well, if Vargas looks pretty good, then all of a sudden the conversation gets a lot more fun.
And that's a good point, Jim, because when you look at Murakami, Montgomery, and Vargas for our OGs, batting averages are not very high for these three. Murakami's at 232, Montgomery's at 221, Vargas is at 230. But in Vargas's case, more than half of his base hits have gone for extra bases. He's got 5 doubles, the triple, and 9 home runs. All 3 of them have an OPS above 800. Vargas is slugging .475 with a .366 on base percentage. I mean, Jim, just like in those 2 metrics alone, it's not a lot of singles for Miguel Vargas, but he's getting on base at a high clip. And when he does make impact on the ball, as far as either it lands in the grass or it lands in the seats, more times than not, it's very productive at bat for the White Sox. So I find this to be a very pleasant surprise. And now in the past couple of years, we looked at the White Sox lineup and it's like there are 2 above average hitters in this lineup. But now when you look at 2, 3, and 4, and you see these 3 hitters all have an OPS above 800, and they're all slugging above 475, okay, I can understand where opposing teams now have to think maybe twice on game planning against the White Sox.
And Vargas too is like he's not striking out, or he's striking out at a below average rate, which, you know, he may not be hitting for high average, but certainly dug himself a hole early on. So I think he's been hitting at the average you want to see from him as of late, which is helpful. And then when you have like Montgomery striking out 30% of the time, nearly, you have Murakami striking out over 30% of the time. They're not all the same player. It's close when you have Murakami and Montgomery whiffing a lot, and they have games where they're just stymied, and you have 15 strikeouts from the lineup, and they have 6 of them, and you can't necessarily afford a third guy like that without going cold sometimes. So I think he provides enough contrast with the way he's hitting that, even if he's only hitting like 230, there might be more in there based on how many balls he's putting in play versus the others. And then the fact that like the pop-up rates is fine. Like he's not, popping up 15-20% of the time, which you can kind of treat like strikeouts in terms of how useless the contact is. So like the underlying the factors going into his contact all look pretty healthy to where the average could keep creeping up. And then from there you have basically Murakami and Montgomery looking a little too alike at times, but Vargas being somebody who's standing alone in a lot of different respects.
Now, at McDonald's, wake up to a $4 breakfast meal deal. Wake up to a sausage McMuffin or a sausage biscuit, to hash browns, and wake up to a hot coffee. Get your $4 breakfast meal deal.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher for delivery.
So a philosophical question for both of you gents. And James, I'll start with you because the White Sox as a team have hit 51 home runs this year. The trio of Murakami, Montgomery, and Vargas have hit 34 of those 51 home runs. Can 3 players carry an offense's home run production effectively? Where you can say, it's 3 guys carrying the load, but it's still an above average home run hitting team.
I would certainly say yes for a season if obviously the other components of the lineup are providing value of their own. I wouldn't say like the rest of the White Sox lineup is bulletproof, but they probably feel pretty comfortable. I think they view like a pretty clear top 5, and they're trying to figure out the best combination for the bottom 4 on any given day. With Antonacci and Mydroff having pretty clear roles as above average OBP guys. Why you want more than that is that year to year there's obviously variance with dudes. Like if someone obviously gets hurt, but almost if you look at like contending teams, you almost need to budget like one of your main hitters being off maybe to start the season, or at some other stretch of the season. Like you can't just have like the no margin for error. Like if these 3 guys don't bop, like if one of the legs of the stool goes out, like we're done for, and there's no one else who can really provide any sort of popping away. That's not what you want, which is certainly why you want to look forward to the day where you have Kyle Teel providing like ideally a 20 homer, at least per season type of threat, where you think Brady Montgomery, when he's up and going, provides a better, more well-rounded view of this outfield, or even see like Sam Antonacci becoming like a 10 to 15 home run guy at some point, or have like Edgar Carroll looking back to what he did last year. Like it's not the sturdiest way, but certainly for the idea for a year, they're doing it right now. It's funny. We talked to Colson today pregame, and it's funny because you brought it up that he said it's on a big scoreboard. I'm sure he looks occasionally, but he says he doesn't look at batting average because, like, for Colson, that's like what he said was like hard hit rate or OPS, slug and exit velocity. Like things that are obviously what defines success for Colson Montgomery, which is hitting the ball hard, driving the ball in the air on a frequent basis. Like that's where his skill set is. That's where he should be focused. But he's still like, yeah, like when he was asked, like, so you basically view his role as like a big run producer. He's like, yeah, me, Mooney, and Vargas are all pretty good at it. It's like, yeah, that's a pretty very frank way to like sum up like the strength of their lineup right now. And I think it's pretty true. Like that's the core, that's providing power. It's in terms of like at least like the last 21 games, I want to say, and certainly in terms of home run totals full season, that looks like the core of an above average lineup at this point. It's certainly in better working order than most top three hitters in the rest of the league right now, which is absurd for the White Sox to do that for any stretch of time over the past 3 years. Who will they be able to keep it up for the full season? Is Vargas like a full season 30 home run guy? I think that's above even what I would have set the bar for success for him going into this year. But yeah, it looks like they have the chance to put that together right now. You want to round that out long term. It's not necessarily like if all we have is three boppers, it kind of feels like nothing can go wrong with either of them, or you become very punchless very quickly.
Well, the White Sox, successful weekend series, great come from behind victory on Mother's Day to win that series against the Seattle Mariners. They're 19-21 on the season. I'm going to keep repeating that because we're going to be talking about we're going to give our first quarter grades in a moment and how we would grade the first 40-some games for the Chicago White Sox in 2026. But before we do that, the Chicago White Sox homestand continues. And this series just got a lot more important because the Kansas City Royals come into town. These 3 games starting on Tuesday through Thursday, all 3 of them are at 6:40 p.m. Central Time first pitches. So you have Steven Kolek for the Royals against Eric Fetty on Tuesday. On Wednesday, it is Seth Lugo, who's been pitching well for the Royals against Noah Schultz, which Schultz is looking to bounce back from his previous start. And then on Thursday, it's Chris Bubich for the Royals, and it's to be determined for the White Sox. And it's a bit weird to say this, James, in the middle of May, but it just so happens to be the case as the Royals had a tough series against the Detroit Tigers. All the teams in the American League Central are grouped up together. And I asked you last week in the podcast with the upcoming Angels series, would we be disappointed if the White Sox did not win that series against the Angels? And I think a lot of White Sox fans were disappointed that they didn't take advantage of that opportunity and win that series. So I pose the question again to you after they split in Kauffman earlier this year. If the White Sox don't win this series against the Royals, can White Sox fans feel disappointed?
Everyone should feel their feelings without needing approval from others, Josh. So,
especially yours, James.
There are a lot of psychology books behind me. Anyway, I think at this point, like people want to see how far this goes, like how good this team is, and sense some idea, not feel the momentum, maybe, but are trying to gauge, like, is this something I should really get excited about? Is this team really going to make noise in this race? So at this point, like, you're kind of disappointed if they lose any series, except like maybe the Dodgers, if they take 1 out of 3, you're like, okay, maybe the Yankees are in that tier. But you, at this point, you're trying to like suss out if like they're a good team. Like if they had lost Sunday, yeah, it's the Mariners as a team that was in the ALCS last year, but it also means they'd lost their 2 straight series. And you're kind of like, maybe they're kind of regressing back to the norm, and seeing them certainly get not played with a little bit by Logan Gilbert for 6 innings. Like, maybe it's just an okay offense. So I think we're in a point where anything could be disappointing because the idea of what this team isn't kind of as calcified as it probably was through 40 games the last 2 years, and even if we didn't want to accept it at the time in 2023 as well. So I think everything is kind of open to disappointment in the sense that you're riding the wave. Every series feels a little bit vital, or at least like exciting in terms of like, or urgent in terms of what it says about the team. I guess that's a good place to be, is that anything can be disappointing.
Yeah.
Your heart can get ripped out every night of the summer for another 121 games. Like, please tune in, or 122 or more. Who knows? Maybe there's more heartbreak waiting you.
Yeah, apathy continues to be fended off with the way that the Chicago White Sox have been playing. And Jim, that's something that James and I talked about last week. It is a good feeling that if the White Sox, if they were to lose this series to Kansas City or lose any of the games to Kansas City, it's going to feel a little bit sore for White Sox fans because they look at the standings on Monday morning and the White Sox are right there. So why not believe?
I think depending like how a game unfolds, there are some moments where the White Sox look better, and there's moments where the White Sox look like they don't. They're just short. They're not a full major league lineup. They're not even 2/3 full at times, and because everybody has to take turns in an order, they just might not have what they need at a time where the game is pivoting. So that's, I think, even going beyond like a series proposition, sometimes it's almost inning to inning in terms of like whether they look exciting or whether they look like the Charlotte Knights in disguise. And I think it's a credit to them that, after losing the Angels series, after getting, I think, especially Josh Naylor leading the performance, a risk of a little dignity being lost in the opener of the Seattle series of just, here's Naylor, who's rubbed our faces in before, leading another effort, and Luke Raley more than doubling his career high in RBIs. And that might be a point where things slip away from them, and then, they tighten it up, or even if they don't tighten it up, like they didn't play great defense the last two games, but they found a way. So I think, the fact that the American League seems like it's kind of weak right now, a team that has home run hitters, some instant offense, and then some resourcefulness, whether it's just, having some OBP guys who can take an extra 90 feet when needed, or whether it's maybe they're being underestimated a little bit with how they're playing to where they can surprise some people, or the scouting reports are bare. They can steal some wins that they would look underqualified to pull off in the past 2-3 years. So yeah, it's a really fascinating juncture, especially this juncture where Kyle Teel isn't back, and you're not sure who is the better hitter between Drew Romo and Edgar Carroll. Like, Romo's got the homers, but in terms of like bat to ball effectiveness, it's kind of a wash. It's a really dodgy lineup, and the fact that there are 2 games under 500 with like not really an outfield, and both catchers they'd probably be fine with replacing, but they can only do one, is kind of a neat trick.
Well, now with the first quarter of the season completed, as we have been doing for the last few years, we've been giving out our first quarter grades, and we went on social media. I asked you guys, how would you grade the Chicago White Sox after the first quarter of the season? A lot of C's, a lot of B's, not a lot of D's, not a lot of F's, not a lot of A's, but not a lot of F's. Unlike the last couple of years where it was pretty easy. But we're going to run down the list here. So if you want to play along while listening or working out, we're going to go from offense, defense, starting pitching, the bullpen, and an overall grade for the White Sox in the first quarter. Let's run down these grades. And then, James, I will start with you. What grade would you give the Chicago White Sox offense after the first quarter?
For expectations, I want to say like they're 11th in OBS right now. They were like 11th in WRC plus coming into the day. I know it wasn't a good day for that, and it needs to reset. But for them to be middle of the pack and on the right side of the middle of the pack, for what I was like, what we realistically hoped for, especially with like Teel being out this entire time, I want to say like A, because I didn't expect them to do better than this. I think this is the top end of outcomes I would have hoped for. The high school I went to, you could get like over 100% on your grades if you did extra credit assignments or something. So I think that's probably what it would be if they were a top 10 offense based on expectations coming into the year. I know, like in terms of pure performance and like, oh, we need to look like a playoff team or a team that is a good enough offense to go far or be a division winner. It's probably a B or in that range, but especially like the reason you got here in terms of like long-term development with Vargas taking this leap forward, Colson at least sticking holding serve from last year, which was like really, really good offensive season from a shortstop. And Mydroth kind of looking a bit better in terms of like a more viable like table setter guy. Maybe he's not gonna ever hit for a lot of power, but if his OBP is like in the 340s, like you're pretty happy putting that guy in. And Antonacci like translating pretty immediately. I think that's pretty good. Tristan Peters, from like a guy wasn't going to make the team to probably giving you as much offense as you would have hoped Acuna ever would, from center field, and at least putting up like nutty metrics. Even though they pushed him to right field when Acuna came into center field Sunday, it was like they do like little things that make me think like OAA is not like the guiding light post for the White Sox defensive decisions. I think that mostly cancels out the big negative, which is Edgar Carroll like taking a big step back and looking like someone who needs to do some sort of reset to get back to the very useful hitter he was last season. I hate to keep harping on him, but I think generally it's gone about as good as you could have reasonably hoped, even if it's not objectively like a good offense in terms of league standings. Maybe it is, because obviously the most recent sample is the best one, and they certainly view it as kind of linear progression for them getting better. But even if it's not yet actually one of the top offenses in the league, it looks like as good as you could hope for, especially with the ingredients involved from what we were sitting on opening day for what we hope this group could form as.
All right, so James has got an A. I'm giving the White Sox offense a B. As James mentioned, they're 11th in OP. Yes, they're averaging 4.27 runs per game, even though they're 6th in home runs. At least they're averaging more than 4 runs a game, Jim. But it'd be nice to see if they can inch closer to 4.5 runs per game before I feel really comfortable moving that letter grade up to an A. But I agree on a lot of the points that James made when you look at expectations, that I think everyone should grade the offense favorably. Do you grade the offense favorably after the first quarter?
I was between you guys at B+. Like, it feels like there's just enough missing to where I can't give them an A, but the fact that all of the players who were important to be able to project from last year, all doing so, Caro aside, and like Teel, but Teel's right now an incomplete. Like Murakami making the immediate transition to the best like 3 true outcomes player profile possible. Montgomery, Vargas, that middle of the order, Antonacci and Mydroth being, I would say, probably 80th percentile outcomes of what you think they could be. That's what you want. And everybody else is more or less supposed to be interchangeable and or replaced by the end of the year. So that would seem to be close to the best case scenario. Just, I think getting something from catchers, I think, would be one of those missing elements that would get it to an A, to where you look at it and say, like, I want for nothing. And I think that's why I stop a little short. But to have just one player or one position missing out of that, and some wildly overachieving based on what we thought they might look like, adjusting over the course of the first 40 games, yeah, B+ is great.
All right, so let's move over to the defense. And Jim, I'll have you start. What grade would you give the White Sox defense after the first quarter?
Feels like a C. I think there's like enough sloppiness to where, especially in the outfield being so unsettled early on, that there's enough missing to where you feel like, yeah, this is incomplete. This is parts are being swapped out. We're flying by the seat of our pants a little bit. And that's, I think, why I kind of gravitate towards a grade that starts with a C versus a B, which is when you feel like, yeah, it's major league above average. There's enough going right, I think, like Montgomery looking like a real shortstop when there were not necessarily doubts, but I guess like shock by how capable he looked in his rookie season, hoping it wasn't kind of some small sample mirage. Mydroth looking really good at second base. Murakami looking good enough at first base. Vargas looking good enough at third. Like, the infield is more or less fine. There's just been some, catcher instability, and then the outfield with Acuna having some issues. Getting to center, Antonacci looks like an infielder at times and left. Right field's just been unsettled, where there isn't anybody who I'd say, I guess Everson Pereira, when he's playing, might be somebody who can elevate that group grade, but he just hasn't played enough to really define the outfield one way or another. So I think there's enough room for improvements to where I can't give him a B, but I think there's enough going right, especially just in the infield and with the players who are more or less fixed in place for the next 2+ seasons, to where like I wouldn't go lower, because that would feel like then what do you want from these guys? And based on expectations, I think they're more or less meeting them in the infield.
I'm giving the defense a C-. I'm with Jim. The infield, other than catcher, has been playing well when you're looking at the fielding Bible. The White Sox as a team, though, still ranked 26th in defensive runs saved. As a unit, they're -6 defensive runs saved. However, left field, -7. They are getting the worst defensive production in left field in Major League Baseball. And right field is -2. So hopefully Braden Montgomery, hopefully more playing time from Sam Antonacci. He made a nice diving catch over the weekend against Seattle. Maybe Kyle Teel can help out on the catching defense for the White Sox. So after the first quarter, James, I've given the defense a C-, but I do think that they will improve as the season progresses, as they find better solutions for those key spots. How would you grade the White Sox defense after the first quarter?
I think I'm probably in the C range. They're like really middle of the pack in terms of like fielding run value on the Statcast. Their catching, given that that's the emphasis for them, has been obviously shaky. Clearly, they feel like Teel is like their highest potential defender, and they have not had him, so that's part of it. But they went out and practically signed Reese McGuire, and then he really struggled with the running game.
Yeah.
Caro is a bit better framing. He's ticking up everything like defensively a little bit, but obviously still not like the greatest. And Venable even said like the other day that like some of their performance range wise in the outfield is like below their expectations in a way that they were a little surprised by. I think the infield's pretty solid. Murakami's had some wonky moments. Some of them just like, yeah, this guy hasn't played here a ton. Vargas is max, like it's hard to ever harp on him because he's clearly giving you everything he's got all the time, but he's like in the range of average third base defender, a little bit below. He's not ever going to be like a huge plus there, it seems. So I don't know. He randomly made himself like a 30 home run hitter. I don't know if I could put any ceilings on him. And certainly in terms of like, if we want to grade in terms of expectations, the last like 3 years of the White Sox has been like, well, we don't have a ton of money and we're clearly not going to hit, or we're not going to be that competitive this year. But like the one thing we can certainly like exert the most control over is improving our defense and the cleanliness of our play, as they put it a lot. And that's kind of been like something it's been harder for them to see big gains of. So by standards, like, hey, we're never going to be the team that's really splurging on bats or, high octane arms in a big way, at least in terms of like how they're operating. Obviously, like Ishbia is at the games, and like you can, like, are you sure you won't at some point? Look at, he's right there. In terms of like how they're like strategizing, like how this team's going to win, I don't think they've made as many strides defensively as they've kind of talked up they should to really call it a big success.
So then from the offense and defense over to the pitching side, we start with the starting pitchers. I'll start. I'm giving the starting pitchers a B, but the arrow is definitely pointing up. What kind of brings the grade down, Anthony Kay didn't have the best start to the season. I think he's looked better in his last 2 outings for the White Sox. Noah Schultz is finding his ground, and we know about the whole Shane Smith situation. But Davis Martin was outstanding again on Sunday. Davis Martin's going to the All-Star team. I mean, he continues this, he's going to the All-Star team. And Sean Burke has been impressive. Eric Fetty, yeah, he might be a number 4, number 5 starter, but it feels like the White Sox have the 2024 version of Eric Fetty again. There's opportunity for this rotation to get better if Hagen Smith ever figures out how to stop walking everybody and maintaining his velocity. Maybe if Tanner McDougal isn't out for the entire season, if somebody else can maybe step up. As far as in Charlotte, I think the arrow is pointing up, though, for this starting pitching unit. It's Doesn't have a lot of big names, James, but they have been pitching incredibly well. And in combination of what the offense has been doing, I think is a big reason why this team is just 2 games below 500 at the 25% mark of the season. What grade would you give the starting pitching staff?
It's like, how much do you weigh like Davis Martin, pitching really at like ace levels? There's no other like equivocating to really done about it. To like a bunch of other things that look a bit more rickety. Like Sean Burke looks solid. Like he's probably like number 2 in terms of production. Also, like how good you feel about it going forward. I mean, maybe you put Noah Schultz above that, certainly in terms of like long-term potential, but like in terms of peripherals, like Sean Burke has performed better so far. And you feel good about Schultz overall, but you also know like he's on single digits for career starts still. You're going to see outings like the last one, and that's something you should bake into your projections a little bit. Like, I think we all feel better about Noah Schultz, both what he's done and certainly going forward, than like a 4.30 ERA, 4.30 FIP, but that's what he has. So
yeah,
in terms of like grading the for a quarter pole, like that's it. And K, obviously his last start was good and he throws hard and you can kind of see a path there. And Fetty has gotten good results so far, but his FIP is 2 runs above what his ERA is. That's at least something to watch in terms of what you're saying. It's funny you said like the same version. Like, I think it's similar production. I think it's a very different version because we were talking about how he's basically throwing sweepers 40% of the time right now. It's kind of the pitch that's rolling best, and it's what's working. And the sinker was a little bit better this last time out, and they feel like they might lean on other stuff as the year goes on. But it's a lot more like, all right, decent start, let's see how it goes, then all right, we don't have to worry about the spot anymore type of role. So with Shane Smith both struggling and getting hurt, I think they've had some performances where they haven't felt it that strongly so far just yet, but there is a reason why he was viewed as maybe one of the more stable options for the whole season, and not having him or not getting him right, and not necessarily having Tanner McDougal as a quick option, and then Hagen Smith clearly like still building towards what you want him to look like. I might lean more like B- C+ territory for them. I want to like make sure my grade like just is in awe about like how good Davis Martin looks and how steady he's been and how productive he's been. But as far as a group, as a cohesive whole, I think it's a little shaky, and I think it's been a little shaky in a way that might not be fully resolved. So I'm lean towards, if I'm going to give the offensive A, I'll say B- just because like I don't want to kill the vibes. It's also really hard to look at their starting pitching stats in any big like drop down chart, because they've been using so many openers. It's like, how much are you just analyzing Grant Taylor performance if you're looking at their like starting pitching splits compared to the rest of the league? So congrats to them on rendering statistics useless in some way. That's a successive strategy.
Jim, how would you grade the White Sox starting pitchers after the first quarter?
Yeah, it does turn into a philosophical exercise of just, is it grading the quarter as though it were a 40-game season, and the results are what they are regardless of how they got there, then I think would be B to B+. I would say B overall, B+ if you consider they did it without Shane Smith. I would consider if Smith only got 3 starts and they were ugly, I would say they're courting disaster. But having Schultz come in and do okay 4 or 5 starts, and have Fetty kind of earning his contract already with what you hoped you'd get from him, which is just buying time for others, that he's accomplished that much so far for a month and a half, and that's fine. And Burke looking better, and certainly like showing a more repeatable form of somebody who can get through 5-6 innings with regularity. Like, that's cool. So like there are signs of like this starting rotation was good enough for a major league team, maybe not a postseason team, but you've seen teams have bigger problems, especially teams with ambitions. So I would consider that like a solid B. I think just Fetty worries me with how he's finished his last couple starts, of just looking like he's going to have a hard time completing 2 times through the order with regularity. And then you have Schultz, who is probably going to have some workload concerns at some point, or maybe some signs of hitting a wall, or might need some kind of breather, because he's never thrown 100 innings in a season. And right now he's being used like, if not like a full-fledged major league starter, like expected to go 5-6 innings, which can add up when it comes to stress and a major league schedule, not having a Monday off every single week. So that's why I think, the wheels could fall off to where, you look at first quarter grades and you thought like, this is a B rotation, this is barely a D plus at some point. If you look at it in terms of like, these grades should carry over to the next quarter. But if you're talking purely in terms of surviving and advancing, like getting through one turn in the rotation, I think it's hard to go lower than a B just because they've been able to get results regardless of how sustainable some of those results might be.
To your point, when I was talking to Fetty, like I was way too big picture with my questions about like how much he's using a sweeper. Like, oh, is this kind of corresponding with league trends about less fastball usage? He's like, I'm reading swings and they were like off the sweeper last inning, so I'm going to it again. Like we're going hitter by hitter and reading, and that's what the result we came up with. So I think kind of the same mentality of their starts right now.
So then moving over to the bullpen, and James, I'll start with you. What grade would you give the White Sox bullpen after the first quarter?
I feel like Sir Anthony Dominguez had like their bullpens in a microcosm ninth inning just on Sunday of like, whoa, a lot going on there, but it seems like we got out of it by the end. And like that's kind of his season too. It's kind of like the walks are way too high, the strikeouts are like, okay, they were right, the stuff is there. He certainly, like when he's not hanging splitters in the way that he was, seemingly for mechanical reasons early in the year, he's not getting like hammered. He certainly is going to leave the random pitch in the way where it shouldn't be, from time to time. They got like, if you get beyond that, they've got, kind of a core. Like obviously Jordan Leisure is a big part of that grade, and he's now in the minors. So that speaks to how well it goes. And that's a part of their results. They've blown some games because of that. But Newcomb and certainly Brian Hudson stepping into what he's doing, and Grant Taylor, I think you feel pretty good about the top four that they can throw out into leverage situations right now. Jordan Hicks has a 1.20 ERA plus, while like a strikeout to walk ratio that's well underwater. Don't know what to make of that just yet. Doesn't seem like the staff does quite either. He kind of seems like he's medium leverage, I guess is the good umbrella to say how he's working right now. But it's hard to say like how he fits in, because you talk to him and it's like it's very like, hey, am I throwing hard? I perform well when I throw hard. So if I'm healthy and I feel good, which I do, things are going to work out. And it's like 9 strikeouts and 13 walks and 15 innings. Like, okay, he's right. No one hits him hard. So like, is that going to be part of the rounding out their leverage mix by the middle of the season? It's a possibility. Don't know yet, but does Tyler Davis have staying power? The stuff probably looks good to me more than it's like actually played up in terms of strikeout or walks so far. Does Chris Murphy come back and be kind of what they expected him to be at the start of the season, of this good lefty multi-inning Swiss Army knife? Remains to be seen. Does Tyler Schweitzer just kind of stick around and become it? I think there's still some unsettled portions of it. But in terms of, and certainly Sir Anthony, like having the first couple weeks of the season that he did, I don't know if I can get beyond like B- for them, especially since like they paid for this thing, not out the nose, but certainly significantly. So I think they get graded on probably less of a curve than the offense does, even though the offense has kind of the highest profile upgrade at all. But you kind of looked at this team in the season like, well, they keep saying that they want to play defense, and they obviously spent on the bullpen. So maybe these would be strengths of the team, and I don't know if you can quite say that yet. I'm tempted to go B, but I don't know. Leisure kind of not working out, and the degree to which that bums me out makes me inclined to go B-. Maybe I'm being too harsh.
I think you're being pretty positive. I'm giving the bullpen a C. I think it's meeting expectations. So C is meeting expectations. There's room for improvement. There have been some surprises. Brian Hudson has been a revelation for the White Sox. But I do like the example that you used. Yeah, watching the White Sox bullpen this year, very much like the ninth inning on Sunday against Seattle. The bases are loaded with one out. How are they going to get out of this? Will they get out of it? And being a 19-21, being 18-16 in their last 34 games, Jim, they're getting out of those situations more often than expected. So I'm going to give the White Sox bullpen a C for the first quarter. What grade would you give the White Sox bullpen?
They're 6-5 in one-run games, so easy A. They're accomplishing what they set out to improve that mark. No, once again, I feel like I'm between you in terms of like C+ in the sense that a lot of things haven't gone right or have taken time to round into form. Like, Dominguez, I think, is showing why he's been short of a closer. Not because of mentality, but just because the stuff is erratic. And sometimes you can't afford for him to have those 2 walk innings in a one-run game when nobody's warming up behind him and they don't have anybody to come in and face a lefty or somebody like that. So I think like you're seeing what he looks like without a safety net. It can be pretty scary at times. Newcomb had a shaky start, but he's rounding into form. Brian Hudson, I think, is a lefty that they thought that, maybe Chris Murphy or Tyler Gilbert might have been, but they found a second lefty. So, and maybe even a first lefty in terms of the leverage assignments he's been given. So that's fine. Grant Taylor, think they're starting to figure out how to use him in a way that maximizes his usefulness, like the game 2 of the Seattle series where he comes in as the first man in the bullpen, but handling the 6th and 7th, allowing that lead to kind of take root, and then you can mix and match over the final 2 innings as you hope that the offense tacks on. Like, I thought that was a pretty creative use of him, and not necessarily the traditional high leverage, but making it far easier for your other trusted relievers to get the game across the finish line, and maybe not even have to use Seranthony Dominguez if they are able to add on to a lead. Like, I thought that was pretty creative and better than like using him as an opener, which feels like a waste. So I'm seeing kind of a better handle on like the user manual for him. So there's enough going right to where like C+ feels like the plus feels like positive. It's C, but with a plus. And you can see them adding on and building from there. There's just been a lot of overhaul and turnover everywhere else to make it feel largely unsettled.
It's fun when like the Sporkle is difficult, but not when it's just like Doug Nikhazy challenge level impossible. It's like, oh, well, why not even play this game? Like,
Trevor Richards, we'll see how long he lasts.
Yeah. And then that brings us to the overall grade and how we would grade the White Sox in the first quarter. Jim, I will start with you. What grade would you give the White Sox in their first quarter?
I would say B+ for 77 win pace. That's above expectations. And given the state of the American League, it's might be enough to contend, or at least, go into the trade deadline thinking like, should this team add? Like, who can they trade that, won't come back to bite them? I think might be the bigger calculus than like, can the White Sox get better? Just, who do they have to deal that won't just undercut one position, rob Peter to pay Paul. But I think like part of me wants to give them like an A- for the fact that after the first 2 series, they've been a credible, legit American League team and, trading punches and stealing some series that make other teams' Reddits go nuts. I can't believe the White Sox are taking a series. And when you look at where they were last year and really emphasizing the second half that they had, and you're wondering like, well, it's half a season and we've seen the White Sox get off terrible starts and not be able to sustain any momentum. And it seems like they've mostly done that to where you feel like they have, especially without Kyle Teel, I think is pretty impressive. Given that I ranked him the second most essential White Sox, and given the depth issues, you really can't afford to lose somebody like that and not feel a huge hit. Like, I think they felt it in terms of the catching production, but I think in terms of the overall health of the team, like, maybe it's just the state of the American League talking, but The fact that they're in second place in the AL Central, that would be hard to predict through 40 games. That, how much more could you expect? So I think that's when to go B plus, because theoretically you can see areas where they could do better. But given everything that's gone right, or maybe the scale of the way things have gone right, have gone really right, could you legitimately expect more? And I think B plus kind of splits that difference.
James, how about you? How would you grade the White Sox in their first quarter?
I want to be in a kind of a similar line. I think it's very easy to be prisoners of the moment, and certainly like the outlook is rosier than it's ever been in terms of playing to a 77 win pace. I think it's like what we like pegged them at. I also don't necessarily think our win projection represented like an A grade on its own. It's probably like, if they hit what we thought in the mid to high 70s, that's like BB plus territory. So in general of that, they were really bad for like first 2 weeks, and those like games count. And certainly in terms of like what kind of like spring they had and what they talked about, like, yes, the first start of the season's always feeling things out. Everybody on the team has talked about how much they were feeling things out in the first couple of weeks, but being ready to play out the chute is part of the season, and definitely matters, and certainly will matter in seasons that have a lot more weight to them, and like a lot more importance of like, hey, they have to get out if they want to achieve their goals of winning a division, or winning home field advantage throughout the playoffs, stuff like that. So you can't just like wave it away, except in like these types of seasons. And they looked really bad. They didn't look ready to go out the chute. So I think because of that, I want to like pair back to like B plus rather than A minus, just because like everything looks awesome recently when we're grading this season as a whole. I think like the outlook is probably more like, hey, an A to A minus overall season for this team looks a lot more possible than, or even a lot more probable than we thought at the beginning of the season. But I think those 2 weeks can't just disappear entirely in my analysis. So I'll ease it back to B plus, even though I'm the one who wants to go in the clubhouse and be everyone's friend. So, oh well. We'll see if they can get over their enmity about a B plus rating. I've gotten over F rankings for off seasons before. Surely we can get through this.
Well, they deserved enough when you gave them that grade, James. I'm giving the White Sox first quarter a B. Even though I sound the most optimistic about this team, I'm surprised by the grades that you guys have given the White Sox. I don't think you can give them really a C. And to your point, Jim, I agree with you. We'll talk about what's happening around Major League Baseball in a minute here. I do think our enthusiasm for where the White Sox are right now, a huge factor is just how poorly the American League has started this year. As we're recording this, there's only 3 teams that have a winning record. That's it. Everybody else is at 500 or below 500. But the White Sox are right there at 19-21. Despite starting 1-5, despite losing 6 straight home games, they're right there. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be happy with what the White Sox have done. I think there's a lot where you could point to and say, oh man, if they had just started better, or they go 2-4 instead of 0-6 against Tampa Bay and Baltimore at home, maybe they would be in first place as you guys are recording this podcast. But the fact that there could be some regret that there's not more positive results for this White Sox team coming off 3 straight 100-loss seasons, I think those are great signs. So let us know in the podcast page on SoxMachine.com, or hit us up on social media what your first quarter grades are for the Chicago White Sox. And then to wrap up this episode, we'll quickly take a look around Major League Baseball. James, I'll start with you. What's catching your attention around baseball?
Mostly because I talked to my friend, former podcast partner Tom Fornelli so much, who's tried to make himself a Giants fan. The degree to which that's
is he coming back? Is he coming back on the bandwagon?
No sign of it yet. I bring up how many Italians are present all the time, but no immediate results. Or he's got a good poker face. But certainly, like, it's interesting that like they're led by their former legendary catcher and have now cut bait on 2 kind of first round draft pick catchers that were definitely seen as catchers of the future at the time. Kind of because like they are. I mean, Bart had obviously more of his issues in terms of like what and not even necessarily as a regular now. But Bailey seems like a catcher that catchers would love, but it turns out like an elite hitting catcher didn't necessarily see him as like the solution. So now he's like in his natural resting place for great glove, no bat catchers in Cleveland, and whether that makes Cleveland more Cleveland or lets them to a different level, I guess remains to be seen. But the Giants just like feel very White Soxian in their struggle to find any offense at all, and to the point where they're questioning or taking away from other bits of their identity.
Yeah, the Giants have only scored 130 runs in 40 games this season. Not good at all. They're currently 16-24, fourth place. They're only a half game ahead of the Colorado Rockies in the National League West. Jim, what's catching your attention around Major League Baseball?
I'm always fascinated by the Twins because of just how they go about their business and how much turmoil they have at the top and how many conflicting messages they send. And the fact that they're like hanging around and being, I think subject to the forces of nature and rising and falling based on the rest of the league. I think it's a fascinating barometer.
Yeah, in the next quarter, if we fast forward this season, another 40 games, I'm curious where the White Sox are going to be. Dan Zaborski mentioned in a previous episode, the White Sox have a stretch in June where it's 3 games in Philadelphia and then a homestand against the Atlanta Braves and Los Angeles Dodgers, the 2 best teams in the entire league. And then on the road to the Yankees and to Detroit. That's probably the gauntlet for the Chicago White Sox season. So we'll see where the White Sox are. But if you fast forward and the American League is still this chaotic, there's still only a couple of good teams, and they are in the American League East with the Yankees and the Rays. I wonder if anyone gets bold in the American League and making moves before the deadline, seeing this opportunity to push more poker chips in the middle, or everybody just decides to stay put and to see how this season plays out. And maybe that keeps the White Sox in contention longer than expected. But it's been a fun first quarter. It's been all over the place for the Chicago White Sox. But where they are after 40 games of the season and just a game back in the division, and if the season were to end today, the Chicago White Sox will be tied for the final wild card spot of the postseason. The fact that we could say that right now, and it's happening in the American League, makes it really exciting to see what the second quarter will provide to the Chicago White Sox and, of course, to White Sox fans. But again, you guys can stick around for the ride with us. Visit us daily at SoxMachine.com. And thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Sox Machine Podcast. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You could also watch our videos on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. With the White Sox being at home, we have plenty of interviews and all the sound bites from the post-game press conferences that you could check out. So if you do watch our videos, but you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please do so you get those notifications when we do have new videos on youtube.com/Sox Machine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the social media platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James Fegan at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball and the upcoming Major League Baseball draft, sign up at SoxMachine.com/products. Monthly plans start at $5. That gets you the ad-free version with the podcast and the website. Also unlocks the comment section for you. We do have the Veterans Committee, so we do have a couple spots open at our VCs if you want to be in the group chat and be able to text directly to Jim and James either during the game or even on off days, or James sharing as far as some of the rumors that he is hearing about the White Sox or incoming news. If you want that additional insight that you don't see out there in the public, sign up at SoxMachine.com/products. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.